The night split open with the roar of thunder. Lightning clawed across the dark sky, its jagged flash illuminating the vast, lonely plains. Rain pounded the earth, turning dirt into rivers of mud, washing away the faint tracks of a horse that galloped wildly into the storm. Behind it, stumbling, broken, a lone cowboy dragged himself forward, his body trembling with pain. Blood seeped from his side, soaking into the ragged shirt that clung to him. His breath was shallow, each gasp rasping like gravel in his chest. He tried to call out, but the wind tore his voice away. Finally, his knees buckled. He fell face first into the mud, the storm swallowing him whole. This was the West in 1872, a place where life was cheap and mercy scarce. The Civil War was over, but the scars of battle stretched across the land, as deep and raw as those in the hearts of men. Railroads carved through wilderness. Settlers fought for scraps of earth, and outlaws ruled where lawmen feared to tread. For every town that rose, another fell in fire and blood. The frontier demanded more than it gave, and only the toughest, or the most desperate, endured. In a small valley tucked between rolling hills, a modest farmhouse stood against the storm's fury. Its whitewashed boards were weathered, the roof patched more times than one could count. Lantern light flickered through a single window. Inside, a young woman moved quietly, her hands steady though the storm rattled the shutters. She was slender, her dark hair tied back with a strip of cloth, her sleeves rolled to the elbows from an evening of work. Her name was Clara Hayes, daughter of a widow who had known nothing but hard labor and harder loss since the day her father was laid in the ground. At just 19, Clara bore herself with the poise of someone twice her years. She rose with the dawn, cared for her mother, tended the livestock, and worked the soil until her hands blistered. She had learned long ago that dreams had no place here. Dreams could not plow fields or mend fences. And yet, in the silence of the night, she still allowed herself one wish, that life might one day offer her something more than survival. The storm's howl was pierced by a faint sound, carried on the wind. Clara froze, a half-peeled potato in her hand. There was again a cry, low and ragged, barely audible over the rain. Heart quickening, she set the knife down and crossed to the door. Against her mother's voice in her head urging caution, she pulled the door open and stepped into the tempest. Rain lashed her face, cold and sharp. She shaded her eyes against the lantern's glow and searched the darkness. At first, she saw nothing but sheets of rain and the shadows of swaying trees. Then, as lightning tore open the sky, she saw him, slumped against the fence post at the edge of the yard. For one breathless moment, she thought it was a ghost, some spirit of the storm come to claim them. But when he stirred weakly, trying to lift his head, her heart leapt. A man, alive, and bleeding. She rushed forward, skirts heavy with water, and knelt beside him. His face was pale beneath the mud, his eyes half shut, lashes trembling against rain. He muttered something incoherent, then went still. Clara pressed her hand to his chest. His heart still beat, though faint. She hesitated only a second before calling over her shoulder. "Ma, quick, help me." Her mother's voice rang sharp from the doorway. "Clara, leave him. You don't know who he is." "I can't," Clara cried, already sliding her arms beneath the stranger's. "He'll die." With strength born of urgency, she hauled him upright, dragging him toward the house. Each step was a struggle, his weight nearly pulling her down into the mud, but she gritted her teeth and pressed on. Her mother stood in the doorway, shaking her head, fear etched deep in her wrinkled face. "Strangers bring trouble," her mother warned. "You know this." Clara's voice broke with effort as she dragged the man inside. "Then trouble is better than leaving him to die in the dirt." The cowboy collapsed onto their wooden floor, mud and blood staining the planks. Clara dropped to her knees beside him, panting, pushing wet strands of hair from her face. Her mother scowled, but fetched rags and a basin of water nonetheless. The storm rattled the house as Clara pressed cloth against the wound in his side. The man groaned, flinched, then tried to push her hand away with surprising strength. "Don't," he rasped. eyes flashing open for the first time. They were gray as storm clouds, hard and defiant. "Don't touch me." Clara met his gaze, unflinching. "You're bleeding to death. I won't let you die on our floor." His breath came sharp, his jaw tight, as though he wanted to argue. But the fight left him in a single exhale, his arm falling limp. His eyes fluttered shut again. Clara bound the wound, her hands steady though her heart raced. Who was this man? Bandit? Drifter? Soldier left behind by the war? She didn't know. But as thunder rolled across the plains and rain hammered the roof, she knew only one thing with certainty. Their lives had just changed forever. The fire crackled low, throwing long shadows across the cabin walls. Outside, the storm had dwindled to a steady rain, but inside the little farmhouse, the battle for life had only begun. Clara sat at the stranger's side, her eyes fixed on his shallow breaths, her hands raw from wringing out bloodied rags. The wound was deep, torn ragged as if by more than a bullet, like a man had been dragged by violence itself. Her mother hovered near the hearth, lips pressed thin, sewing needle in hand. She worked in silence, though every so often she muttered her disapproval. "This is folly, Clara. We don't know his name. We don't know what sins he carries. If he brings trouble here, it will be on your head." Clara didn't answer. She only dipped another cloth into the basin and pressed it against the cowboy's wound. His body jolted, a raw groan spilling from his throat. His eyes flew open, wild and unfocused, and for a moment Clara saw something terrible there. Pain deeper than flesh, the kind that haunted a man's soul. He tried to push her away again, but his strength faltered. "Stay still," she whispered. "You're safe here." He coughed, spat blood, and turned his head away. "Ain't no place safe," he rasped. "Not for me." The words sent a chill through her, though she couldn't have said why. For 3 days, he drifted between fever and silence. Sometimes he muttered names in his sleep, Jed, Thomas, maybe brothers or friends. Other times he thrashed violently, trapped in nightmares. Clara sat through it all, changing bandages, holding him down when he fought invisible enemies. Once, when she touched his arm, he flinched so hard she thought he might strike her. The fear in his eyes then wasn't of her, but of himself. She learned pieces of him through these moments, broken shards of a story. He had fought in the war, she guessed, from the scars that crisscrossed his body. He carried loss heavy enough to choke him. And beneath it all, a man who had forgotten how to let kindness touch him. Yet in those quiet hours when the fever broke, when he lay staring at the rafters above, Clara caught glimpses of something else. A man weary of running. A man desperate to believe in something more than survival. Her mother remained cold. She warned Clara to keep her heart guarded. "Men like him don't stay," she said. "They take what they need and vanish, leaving ruin behind." But Clara, for reasons she could not name, refused to see only the danger. Perhaps it was pity, perhaps something deeper. All she knew was that the thought of letting him die felt like letting hope itself slip away. On the 4th night, trouble came knocking. The dogs outside barked ferociously, their snarls cutting through the dark. Clara froze where she sat, hand halfway to the stranger's brow. Her mother rushed to the window, peering out through a slit in the curtain. The sound of hoofbeats echoed faint across the wet earth. 3 riders, their silhouettes black against the moonlight. Clara's heart leapt in her throat. "Bandits?" she whispered. Her mother's voice was tight. "Could be, or worse." The cowboy stirred at the sound, his eyes snapping open with startling clarity. "They found me," he muttered, struggling to sit, though his wound reopened with the effort. Blood seeped through the bandage. Clara pressed him back down. "You'll kill yourself." His jaw clenched. "If it's them, you'll be dead if you keep me here." The hoofbeats slowed outside. A rough voice called out, mocking lazy. "Evening, folks." Heard tell a man came limping this way. "You seen anyone wander by?" Clara's mother shook her head frantically at her. "Don't answer. Stay quiet." But the dogs barked louder, scratching at the door, betraying their fear. Boots thudded on the porch. A heavy hand struck the door. "You got something to hide in there?" the voice demanded. Clara's pulse thundered in her ears. She turned to the stranger. His gray eyes locked with hers, urgent, desperate. For the first time, he wasn't fighting her help. He was trusting her. Without a word, Clara dragged a blanket over him and motioned for silence. She pulled the chair close to the hearth, gripping her sewing basket as though it might pass for normalcy. The door creaked open before her mother could protest. 3 men stood silhouetted by the moon, faces shadowed beneath wide-brimmed hats. Their eyes searched the small cabin, lingering on Clara, then the fire, then the floor. Mud tracked in from their boots, heavy and wet. The leader smiled thinly. "Long storm tonight," he said. "Could freeze a man out there." Clara's voice shook, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "We've seen no one." One of the men sniffed, eyeing the floorboards where a faint smear of blood had dried. He smirked. "Funny. Looks to me like someone's been leaking." Her mother stepped forward, chin raised. "That's hog's blood from slaughter. You call us liars in our own home." The leader chuckled darkly. "Easy now, ma'am. Just a skin questions." For a breathless moment, Clara thought they'd tear the house apart. But then from somewhere in the dark woods beyond, a sound split the night. A sharp, high whistle, eerie and piercing. The bandits stiffened, glancing toward the trees. The leader cursed under his breath. "Damn engines," one muttered. Without another word, the 3 men mounted their horses and rode off, their laughter trailing behind like smoke. Clara collapsed into her chair, hands trembling. She dared a glance toward the bed. The cowboy lay still, but his eyes burned with recognition. He whispered just one word, "Hunter." Clara followed his gaze to the window, where, for just a heartbeat, she thought she saw movement among the trees. A lone figure, tall and silent, watching them. Then, as quick as lightning, he was gone. The storm outside had passed, but Clara knew another storm was only just beginning. The morning sun rose pale and cold, its light spilling over the valley like a promise that could not be trusted. Clara stepped outside, her skirts brushing damp grass, and drew a shaky breath. The night's terrors still clung to her, every creak of wood and rustle of wind echoing like footsteps on her soul. She turned toward the barn where the chickens clucked nervously, then glanced back at the cabin. Through the cracked window, she could see him, the cowboy, sitting upright for the first time, sweat beading his brow as he tested his strength against pain. For days he had been little more than a shadow on her floor, but now there was life stirring in him. His shoulders, though bandaged, were broad and taut. His jaw was sharp, lined with stubble. His eyes, though weary, watched her every move as if calculating both gratitude and danger. Clara felt a strange unease. She had saved him, yet she didn't know who he was or what debts hunted him. That morning, for the first time, he spoke his name. "Daniel." His voice was hoarse but steady. "Daniel Reed." Clara hesitated, then nodded. "I'm Clara." She didn't offer more. Names were dangerous things out here, and trust was currency no one gave freely. Still, hearing him speak, claiming life again, felt like some victory. Days folded into each other. Daniel regained his strength slowly. He moved with a limp, but forced himself to help where he could, mending the fence that had half collapsed under the storm, patching a hole in the barn roof. Clara watched him work, his hands skilled and deliberate, as though he'd built more than fences before. He never smiled, not truly, but sometimes when their eyes met, something flickered there, a quiet acknowledgement, the faintest spark of gratitude. Clara found herself lingering at those moments. When he carried the water bucket from the well, when he fed the chickens, his large hands surprisingly gentle with the skittish birds. When he crouched to fix the broken latch on the gate, sweat gleaming at his temples. She caught herself studying him, wondering what kind of man could bear so much pain and still rise each day to work. Yet the shadow of danger lingered. One evening, as twilight burned orange across the horizon, the sky split open with a fresh storm. Winds howled, tearing at the shingles, and rain pelted down like bullets. Clara rushed outside to secure the animals, her skirts heavy with mud. Daniel followed, his hand pressed against his still-healing wound, gritting his teeth with every step. Together they fought the storm, ropes straining as they tied the barn doors, buckets clattering as the wind tried to hurl them into the night. Clara's hair whipped free from its ties, rain streaking down her face, but she saw Daniel beside her, straining against the gale, and for the first time she felt something more than fear. She felt strength in shared struggle. They dragged a calf back in a shelter just as a lightning bolt cracked across the valley. The ground shook and the frightened animals cried out. Clara nearly fell, but Daniel caught her, his arm like iron around her shoulders. For one suspended heartbeat, their eyes locked in the stormlight. Neither spoke, but something passed between them, trust, fragile and raw. The storm left the farm battered but standing. That night, Clara and Daniel sat in silence by the fire, steam rising from their damp clothes. The air was thick with unspoken words, but neither broke the quiet. Sometimes silence said more than speech. But peace was brief. 2 days later, the bandits returned. Their shadows fell long against the valley floor as they rode nearer, their laughter carrying on the wind. Clara spotted them first, her chest seizing with fear. Daniel, already at the fence, stiffened. His hand reached instinctively toward the gun he no longer carried. His jaw set. "They won't stop," he muttered. "Not till I'm dead." Clara's stomach twisted. "Why are they after you?" she asked, her voice trembling. His gray eyes darkened. "Because I wouldn't ride with them. They wanted me for a job. I refused. Men like that don't forgive." Before Clara could answer, the bandits veered closer. One dismounted, scanning the yard. She held her breath. They were too close this time. The lie about hog blood would not hold twice. But then it happened. From the tree line, a figure moved. Tall, broad-shouldered, face painted with streaks of ash and earth. A bow in his hand, silent as death itself. An arrow thudded into a tree near the bandits, sharp and deliberate. The men cursed, spun their horses, and backed away, eyes darting toward the woods. "Savage," one spat, though fear laced his voice. "Damn redskins watching us." The leader growled, yanking his horse's reins. "Not worth it tonight. We'll be back." And then they were gone, their hoofbeats fading into the hills. Clara's knees nearly gave way with relief. She turned toward the woods, her breath caught in her throat. The figure still stood there, silent, watching. His eyes gleamed in the fading light, unreadable. Then, as quickly as a shadow, he melted back into the trees. Daniel's expression was grim. "That ain't Chance," he said. "He's following us." Clara hugged her arms to herself. "But he saved us." Daniel shook his head. "Or he's waiting. Can't trust a man who hides in shadows." And yet, that night, as the wind carried the cries of coyotes across the plains, Clara found herself staring out the window, wondering. The hunter in the woods, enemy or ally? And if he was watching over them, why? The West had no room for coincidence. And Clara knew, with a weight in her chest, that the next time the bandits came, there would be no warning shot into the trees. Blood would be spilled. The valley lay in uneasy silence. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Clara woke before dawn, her heart pounding from dreams of hoofbeats and fire. She rose from her narrow bed and went to the window. The world outside was drenched in moonlight, silver fields, dark tree lines, and shadows that shifted too easily. She knew. Somehow she knew. Tonight it would end. Daniel was already awake, sitting by the table, his revolver laid out in front of him. He had cleaned and oiled it with care, though every movement betrayed the pain still burning in his wound. His eyes were steady, harder than she had ever seen them. "They'll come," he said quietly, not looking at her. The storm was just the warning. Tonight they'll finish it. Clara tightened her shawl around her shoulders. "Then we'll face them. Together." He lifted his gaze, something raw flickering there. For a moment, it seemed he might protest, tell her to hide, to stay safe. But instead, he only nodded, as if he had finally accepted that she was more than the fragile girl he had once mistaken her for. The hours crept by. The dogs bristled and growled before the riders even appeared. Hoofbeats thundered across the hills, rolling closer, closer, until shadows emerged against the pale dawn. for riders this time. Guns glinted at their sides. The bandits dismounted at the edge of the yard, their leader grinning through yellowed teeth. "Told you we'd be back," he drawled. His eyes swept the farmhouse, lingering on Clara with hunger that made her stomach twist. "Reckon you've been keeping company with our runaway. Hand him over, girl, and maybe we'll let you live." Daniel stepped out onto the porch before Clara could speak. The revolver hung low at his side, his limp pronounced but his stance unyielding. "You want me, here I am," he growled. "But you'll leave them out of this." The bandits laughed. "Ain't how this works, Reed. Anyone who helps you pays the same price." The first shot cracked the air. Daniel fired fast, driving one rider back with a scream. Chaos erupted. Gunfire echoed through the valley, shattering the still morning. Clara ducked behind the porch rail, heart hammering, hands shaking as she clutched the rifle her father once carried. She lifted it, aimed with trembling fingers, and pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly knocked her back, but she saw one of the bandits jerk, his horse rearing wildly. She gasped, half in fear, half in disbelief. She had fired. She had hit. Daniel fought like a man with nothing left to lose, his shots precise, his movements ruthless despite the blood soaking his side. But there were too many. The leader closed in, grinning, revolver raised. And then an arrow sang through the air. It struck the leader's arm, sending his gun spinning to the dirt. The bandit howled in rage, clutching the wound. Out of the tree line stepped the silent hunter, his bow drawn again, eyes sharp as a hawk's. The mysterious ally had returned. For the first time, Clara saw him clearly, a tall warrior, hair braided with beads, face painted with quiet defiance. He moved with lethal grace, loosing arrow after arrow, driving the bandits back. One fell, another fled, horse pounding into the distance. The leader, bleeding and enraged, lunged for Clara. Daniel fired, the shot ringing like thunder. The bandit fell at her feet, his eyes wide with shock, then empty with death. Silence returned to the valley, broken only by the ragged breathing of the living. The yard was littered with bodies, the dirt stained dark. Clara's hands shook as she lowered the rifle. Daniel stood swaying, blood dripping from his wound, his chest heaving with every breath. The warrior approached slowly, bow lowered. He said nothing, only gave a single nod, respect, acknowledgement, and then turned to leave. Clara stepped forward. "Wait," she called. "Why did you help us?" He paused, glancing back. His voice was deep, calm as stone. "Bandits kill my brother. Their blood was owed. You were in their path." His eyes lingered on Daniel, then on Clara. "Now your path is your own." With that, he vanished into the woods, leaving only silence behind. Daniel sank onto the porch, clutching his side. Clara knelt beside him, pressing cloth to the wound. He caught her wrist, his grip firm despite his weakness. His gray eyes searched hers, raw and unguarded. "You saved me," he whispered, "more than once. And I don't reckon I got much to give, but if you'll have me, I'll spend what's left of me repaying it. Protecting you, protecting this place." Tears stung Clara's eyes, though she smiled through them. "I never asked for repayment, Daniel." Her hand rested gently on his. "I only asked you to live." The dawn broke golden across the valley, painting the farm in fragile light. The yard was scarred, the land stained, yet something new lingered in the air, something like hope. Clara rose, watching the horizon. She was not alone anymore. Whatever storms might come, they would face them side by side. The story closes, but its echo lingers. Out here in the Wild West, love was not soft. It was forged in fire, tested by blood, and bound by survival. And now, dear listeners, if this tale of courage and devotion touched your heart, don't let it end here. Share your thoughts below. Would you have risked your life to save a stranger? Do you believe love can grow in the harshest of places? Leave a comment, give a like if the story kept you on the edge of your seat, and be sure to subscribe for more tales of the untamed frontier. Until next time, may your trails be safe and your fires burn bright.